Kayla Walker had recently started at a new school. She came from a place where survival was about learning to fight. 8 years spent practicing mixed martial arts had transformed her fists into powerful tools. She was a black belt wrapped in teenage quietness, yet the bullies failed to recognize that. They saw a silent black girl who was isolated, an easy target. So they approached her with demands and threats, making their harassment worse every single day. Then, one afternoon, they went too far. Laughter echoed, and someone said she had it coming. The hallway watched silently, but Kayla stayed strong. They assumed she was fragile and would give in, but they were completely mistaken. Before we continue, share where you are watching from worldwide and do not forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story will be unforgettable. The alarm rang at 5:30 in the morning, but Kayla Walker was already awake, staring at the strange ceiling of her new bedroom. Detroit seemed like ages ago, even though only 3 days had passed since the moving van left their old home. She slid out of bed and quietly headed to the basement where her mother had placed a heavy bag in the corner. 40 minutes later, sweat dripped down her forehead as she completed her morning drills. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. The sequences flowed naturally, as if breathing. 8 years of dedication had ingrained these moves deeply, but today, they carried a new weight. Today, they were absolutely vital. Kayla reached for breakfast when her mother, Dr. Patricia Walker, called from upstairs. Williams was standing by the stove, still dressed in her scrubs from the night shift at Millbrook General. "How are you feeling about today, baby?" she asked. "Fine," Kayla responded as she took a piece of toast. It was just another day at school, though her mother's eyes revealed worry. "I understand this change is tough. Millbrook is not like what we're used to." Different was really an understatement. When Kayla entered the front doors of Millbrook High, the sea of white faces confirmed what she had already suspected. Among 800 students, she could count the black students on 2 hands. The hallways were alive with typical morning energy, yet conversation seemed to hush as she passed by. She kept her head high and her shoulders relaxed, exactly as Master Chen had trained her. Never appear vulnerable, but never seek out trouble. Biology in the first period went fairly well, and second period history was bearable. But lunch was where the real lessons started. The cafeteria was like a social map. The popular kids took the center tables, athletes owned one corner, and theater kids gathered by the windows. Kayla grabbed a sandwich and scanned for an empty seat. Just then a voice echoed across 3 tables. "Well, well, look who wandered in here." Derek Morrison stood 6 feet 2 inches tall with the sort of confident swagger that came from never being confronted. His Letterman jacket fit perfectly over broad shoulders, and his smile never touched his icy blue eyes. Behind him, Jack Wilson cracked his knuckles while Tommy Bradley chuckled quietly. The cafeteria grew silent as all eyes focused on the tense encounter unfolding in the middle of the room. Kayla moved toward an empty table, but Derek Morgan stepped right in front of her. "I am talking to you," he said with the calm authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We need to have a conversation." Without hesitation, she held his gaze. "About what? How things work around here?" Derek's grin broadened, exposing too many teeth. "See? New students usually pay a small welcome fee. Think of it as insurance to keep them safe." Jack Wilson and Tommy Bradley appeared at her sides, close enough for her to notice their cologne. The cafeteria stayed completely silent. 200 students watched like they were witnessing a show. Insurance against what? Kayla's tone remained steady, more curious than hostile. "Accidents?" Derek shrugged. "Lockers getting stuck, books disappearing, people bumping into you in the hallways. Funny how clumsy some folks are, especially those who do not really belong here," Tommy Bradley added with a cruel smirk. Kayla placed her lunch tray on the closest table. When she faced Derek again, her stance was relaxed, but her eyes revealed a new determination. "I don't pay protection money." The words lingered like a defiant challenge. Derek's smile wavered briefly before returning with full intensity. That is where you are mistaken, girl. Everyone pays. It's just a matter of whether you pay easy or you pay hard. He stepped forward, lowering his voice to a whisper that somehow carried through the quiet room. The quiet room was filled with tension unless you consider yourself above our small system here, thinking you're superior to the rest of us. I do not pay any attention, she said as she picked up her tray and walked past him toward the vacant table. Derek stood frozen for a moment, clearly taken aback by the outright rejection. The cafeteria held its breath. "This isn't finished," he shouted after her, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "No one disrespects me in my school. No one." Kayla sat down and began to unwrap her sandwich as though nothing had occurred. But her eyes kept track of Derek's every move as he stormed out with his group following closely behind. At a table across the room, Marcus Thompson shook his head and whispered to his friend, "The girl doesn't realize what she has just begun." Slowly, conversations picked up again, but the atmosphere had shifted. By the end of lunch, news would spread across the school that the new girl had openly declared war on Derek Morgan. Kayla took a bite of her sandwich, chewing deliberately. She had hoped to survive at least one day without conflict, but some things were unavoidable. Backing down from Bullies was never a choice for her. The real question wasn't if Derek would strike back, but when and how far he intended to go. The harassment began before the second period ended. Kayla approached her locker with keys in hand, but the lock would not turn. She tried again, double-checking the combination she had memorized that morning. Nothing worked. As she struggled, Jack Wilson appeared nearby. Dealing with her smiling curls can be complicated when they get damaged. She inspected the mechanism and discovered that someone had shoved chewing gum into the keyhole. How mature. "This is just the start," Jack said, walking backwards so he could watch her reaction. Derek has a long memory. Third period American history went by uneventfully, but as Kayla gathered her books, she realized her notebook was gone, the one with 3 days of notes. She searched her bag twice before giving up. In the hallway, she spotted Tommy Bradley flaunting the notebook to a group of freshmen, making exaggerated movements as he read her handwriting in a mocking tone. "Look at this fancy penmanship. He must think she's so special." Kayla calmly stepped forward. "That's mine. Prove it." Tommy held it above his head like a schoolyard bully. "Maybe if you ask nicely, I'll think about giving it back." She did not ask or try to snatch it. Instead, she pulled out her phone and took a picture of him holding it. "What are you doing?" Tommy's cockiness faltered. She slipped the phone into her pocket in case she needed to report him for theft. Tommy's face flushed red, but he tossed the notebook at her feet and walked off. The pages scattered across the hallway floor as Kayla knelt to gather her notes. A pair of worn sneakers came into view. She looked up and saw Marcus Thompson, the same student who had spoken to her at lunch. "You could use some advice," Marcus said quietly, glancing around carefully to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "I'm paying attention. Derek Morgan is not just some privileged kid pretending to be tough. His father owns nearly half the businesses in town, including the car dealership where my mother works. His uncle is the police chief, so when Derek wants something done, it gets done." Kayla held tightly onto her recovered notes. "Are you trying to frighten me?" she asked. "I'm trying to protect you." Marcus Thompson's voice showed sincere worry. "Last year there was this boy, Miguel Santos, a transfer student like you. Derek thought Miguel was getting too close to a girl Derek was interested in. Miguel ended up with a broken nose and 3 cracked ribs, supposedly falling down some stairs, according to the official statement." "Do you believe that?" "I do," Marcus said. "Miguel switched schools 2 weeks later." Leaning in, he added, "Look, standing up feels empowering, but Derek plays dirty and never fights alone. Whatever plan you have, do not go through with it." Before Kayla could answer, Marcus disappeared into the throng of students shifting between classes. The afternoon brought increasing torment. Someone accidentally spilled chocolate milk all over her backpack during lunch. In chemistry class, her safety goggles vanished, forcing her to borrow a scratched pair that blurred all the measurements. By the 6th period, a clear pattern had formed. Derek's group took turns making her life miserable while maintaining plausible deniability. They always had witnesses around who only saw accidents, never the real intentions behind them. Harassment had been building up, but the 7th period went beyond acceptable limits. Kayla sat in English class, trying to concentrate on the conversation about To Kill a Mockingbird, when Derek raised his hand and said to Mrs. Patterson, "I believe we should listen to what our newest student has to say about this book. I bet she has some genuine insights into its themes." Mrs. Patterson smiled warmly and encouraged Kayla, asking if she wanted to share her views on Harper Lee's depiction of racial injustice. The situation was clear, but Kayla responded with thoughtfulness, addressing the book's examination of prejudice and moral bravery. She spoke for 2 minutes, presenting her ideas with clarity and intelligence. When she finished, Derek started to clap slowly and said, "That was very well explained. You are really articulate for." He paused, allowing the underlying meaning to linger in the air. "I mean, it is nice to hear someone who can express themselves so clearly." The classroom went quiet. Mrs. Patterson's face turned red, but she appeared frozen, unsure how to respond to the evident racial implication without making the situation worse. Kayla answered calmly, "Thank you. I appreciate you recognizing my ability to communicate effectively." Derek's smile weakened slightly at her composed reply, but he continued saying, "It is just refreshing. You know, sometimes people from certain backgrounds struggle with academic discussions." The silence grew heavier and a few students shifted awkwardly in their seats. Kayla calmly replied, "I am sure you will find that individuals from all backgrounds can surprise you." Her voice was unwavering like steel when she answered. As the bell rang, she calmly collected her books and walked out with her head held high. Yet inside, a shift had taken place. The games were finished. Derek had gone beyond a point of no return. Down the hallway, she caught the sound of Derek laughing with his friends, likely congratulating himself on his cunning act. He had no clue about the storm he had just stirred. That Friday morning began with Kayla discovering her locker had been decorated. Someone had stuck a banana to the metal door, accompanied by a note that said, "Welcome to the jungle," in Derek's unmistakable handwriting. She removed it expressionless, fully aware of the growing crowd eager to see her reaction. Some looked embarrassed, others quietly smirked. Kayla crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, but kept the tape as proof. "Oh, did you not like your gift?" Derek showed up with his usual crowd, speaking loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I thought you might be missing the urban wildlife." Calmly closing her locker, creative Kayla replied, "You might want to improve your handwriting. It makes it easy to spot the author." Derek's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to his victims standing up for themselves, especially not before an audience. "Maybe you need a lesson in respect. Maybe you need a lesson in basic human decency." The hallway buzzed with whispered reactions as students took out their phones, sensing something much bigger was unfolding. Through the day, the harassment only grew, and in PE, someone had placed... During lunch, Kayla's gym clothes itched as Jack Wilson purposely bumped into her, causing her tray to fall and scatter food across the floor. "Oops," Jack said with a cheeky smile, not bothering to hide his amusement. "Hope you are not too clumsy to clean that up." Kayla bent down to pick up the mess while other students stepped around her. A few offered assistance, but she declined, confident she could manage Derek Morgan's pranks. What she could not tolerate was the growing crowd that seemed to revel in the spectacle. The breaking point happened during 8th period study hall. Kayla sat alone at a corner table focused on calculus homework when Derek and his group approached. The study hall monitor had left, leaving about 30 students unattended. "Hey everyone," Derek announced loudly, making sure all eyes were on him. "I have something special to share." He took out his phone, and suddenly Kayla's voice filled the room through a tiny Bluetooth speaker. It was a recording from her English class discussion the day before, but it had been manipulated. Her sincere remarks about racial injustice were cut and spliced with other clips to make her sound as if she was making harsh, inflammatory comments about white people. The doctored audio painted her as an angry and hostile outsider who despised her new school and everyone in it. Students were shocked, confused, and some were angry. "Now, we know what she really thinks about us," Derek said, slipping his phone away with a smug grin. "Good thing we got to hear the truth." Kayla felt a mix of disbelief and humiliation as the room buzzed with whispers and judgment. She remained motionless as murmurs spread around her. Some students appeared doubtful, others showed disgust, and a few seemed to recognize the audio was altered, but their voices were overwhelmed by those who accepted it as true. "That is not what I said." Kayla's voice pierced through the commotion, yet Derek spoke over her. "Are you accusing me of lying? Everyone just heard you. Everyone heard you tamper with recordings to paint me as someone I am not." Derek moved closer to her desk. "Why would I need to alter anything? We all saw the real you." Just then, the study hall door opened, and Mrs. Chen, the supervisor, returned. The room grew quiet as students suddenly turned their attention to their assignments. "Is everything okay in here?" Mrs. Chen inquired, sensing the unease. "Perfect," Derek replied with his smooth, confident smile. "We are just having a friendly conversation about recent topics." When the bell sounded, Kayla gathered her books with barely trembling hands, held out silently, some avoiding her gaze, others staring openly. The harm was done. By the next day, Derek's manipulated clip would be widespread on social media. Walking to her last class, she caught fragments of talk. "I cannot believe she said that. She seemed so calm and kind." Derek was telling the truth about her. At her locker after school, Kayla found Marcus waiting. "That recording was doctored," he said softly. "I was in English class and heard what you truly said." The situation was settled now. Kayla took out her jacket and said the damage was already done. She could try to contest it and prove it was tampered with, or she could confront the source. Marcus grabbed her arm, urging her not to act rashly. Derek was expecting her to respond aggressively, and he likely had everything planned to make her appear as the offender, aiming to get her suspended or even arrested. Kayla glanced at Marcus's worried expression, then at the students passing by, some still whispering and pointing. Derek had been methodical in his efforts to isolate and humiliate her, every step designed to provoke a reaction that would justify his cruelty. Maybe it was time to give him exactly what he anticipated. She shook off Marcus's hold and headed for the exit. Behind her, Marcus called out, "Kayla, don't do this. It's not worth it." But some things truly are worth fighting for. Her dignity was one of them. Her right to attend the school without fear was another. Sometimes the only way to end a bully's reign was to demonstrate that the victim could stand up and fight back. Outside, Derek and his gang were fooling around in the parking lot, probably celebrating their success and ruining her reputation. They seemed so proud, so confident in their power. Kayla dropped her backpack near the school entrance and walked toward them with determination. It was time to have that confrontation Derek always talked about, but this time, it would happen on her terms. Derek was still laughing over the recording when he noticed Kayla approaching. Across the parking lot, his laughter faded as he noticed her determined walk and how she had dropped her backpack as if it were lifeless. Well, look who finally decided to come and talk. Derek straightened up, with Jack and Tommy Bradley standing on either side, instantly ready to say sorry for being so rude. Kayla stopped about 10 feet away, her tone calm and firm. "I am done with your games, Derek. The fake recording, the harassment, everything ends now." "Oh, it ends when I say it ends." Derek's confidence grew, encouraged by the small crowd of students who had paused to watch, sensing drama. "Do you think you can just walk into my school and disrespect me? Think again. Your school?" Kayla stepped closer. "Last I checked, this is a public institution paid for by taxpayers. including my mother. Derek's expression darkened. Don't get smart with me. You are outnumbered and outclassed. Walk away while you still can. I tried walking away, you followed. I tried ignoring you. You escalated. I tried being reasonable. She advanced another step. Now, we do this my way. Tommy cracked his knuckles. You sure you want to do this? 3 against 1 does not look good for you, and neither does picking on someone you thought could not fight back. Kayla's voice stayed steady, but her stance shifted slightly, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Last chance, Derek. Agree to leave me alone and this does not have to get ugly. Derek laughed harshly, the sound cutting through the afternoon air. You are hilarious. What are you going to do? Call your mother. I'm going to give you exactly what you have been demanding. The moment Derek reached out to grab her arm, Kayla's training kicked in with smooth efficiency. She twisted away from his grasp, caught his wrist, and used his own force to make him stagger before he could regain balance. Her elbow struck his solar plexus, causing him to double over. Jack lunged angrily and wildly at her, but Kayla ducked, swept his legs, and sent him crashing onto the asphalt. Tommy Bradley hesitated, suddenly realizing things were not unfolding as planned. Derek straightened up, breathing heavily but furious. You think you were tough? Let's find out how tough you really are. What followed was fierce and effective. Derek had strength and fury on his side, but Kayla had skill and 8 years of focused training. She flowed around his awkward attempts to catch or strike her, hitting with precision whenever an opening appeared. Jack and Tommy kept trying to assist Derek, but only ended up obstructing him or getting hit by Kayla's defensive moves. The battle moved across the parking lot as Derek continued to charge and swing, refusing to stay down. When it finally ended, Derek lay face down on the asphalt with Kayla's knee pressed between his shoulder blades. They had traveled almost half a block. Derek's nose was bleeding heavily. Jack nursed a swollen eye, and Tommy cautiously held his ribs. Are we finished? Kayla asked, her breath steady despite the effort. Get off me, Derek gasped. Are we finished? She repeated, applying gentle pressure. The tension eased. All right, we are finished. You all will leave me alone now. No more games, no more harassment, and no more altered recordings. Is that understood? Yes, it's understood. Kayla released him and stepped back, observing as Derek turned over and lifted himself up. Blood was trickling from his nose while the small crowd of onlookers stood silently, shocked. Good talk, she said, then walked back toward the school to get her backpack. Inside the building, Principal Martinez was wrapping up paperwork when her secretary knocked. Mrs. Martinez, there has been an incident in the parking lot. Students say there was a fight. With a sigh, Principal Martinez grabbed her jacket. How serious? No one has called an ambulance, but you might want to see it for yourself. The principal quickly went outside and saw Derek Morgan wiping blood off his face as Jack and Tommy Bradley were helping him stand. Nearby stood a group of students with their phones out, the excited noise buzzing around. What happened here? Principal Martinez asked sharply. Nothing, Derek muttered, avoiding her gaze. Just messing around. Derek Morgan, you're bleeding. That is not just messing around. I fell, Derek replied swiftly. I wasn't paying attention and tripped over my own feet. Principal Martinez remained doubtful, but before she could ask more, Derek and his friends were already walking away, Derek leaning heavily on Jack for support. By the next morning, the rumors had already blown up into stories, with some claiming Kayla had. Others claimed she had fought off 5 guys, which was a remarkable tale, but high school rumors rarely cared about the truth. During second period, Jessica Martinez, who was a nervous sophomore, approached Kayla at her locker with her friend Amber, trailing right behind. Hey, Jessica whispered while looking around to make sure no one else heard. Can we talk to you about something? Kayla observed the 2 girls closely. Jessica seemed scared but determined, while Amber looked like she might run away at the first sign of trouble. What is going on? We heard about what happened yesterday with Derek and his group, Jessica went on. We were wondering if you would be willing to help us with something similar." "Similar how?" Amber finally murmured, barely audible. "There are some boys from Riverside High who have been bothering us at the bus stop after school. Yesterday, they—" She hesitated and looked at Jessica. "They grabbed my backpack and threw everything on the ground." Jessica completed the story. "They called her horrible names and said they would be back today to continue what they started." Kayla shut her locker and faced them squarely. "What exactly do you want me to do? Would you like me to come with you to the bus stop today?" Jessica's tone mixed hope with anxiety. "Maybe if they see you there, they will stop bothering us." Kayla looked into their frightened eyes and remembered Derek's bloody nose, the altered recording, and every little detail. The embarrassment that sparked yesterday's clash still lingered in the air. At exactly 3:15, Kayla made her way to the bus stop on Maple Street, accompanied by Jessica and Amber. The afternoon sunlight stretched long shadows between the houses while a gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. The two girls stayed close, their anxious energy almost tangible. Usually the bus arrived near 3:20. Jessica looked at her phone and murmured, "The bus doesn't show up until 3:45, so they have plenty of time to do what exactly?" Kayla questioned, noticing Amber's voice trembling slightly. "Yesterday they surrounded us and said we looked lonely, needing company. When I tried to leave, one grabbed my arm and called me rude. Then they dumped my backpack and made us pick it up while watching us. If we told anyone, they said we'd regret it," Jessica added. Kayla nodded, her eyes scanning the street. "How many were there?" 3. Brad was the leader, a tall guy with bleached hair. Connor had sleeve tattoos, and Tyler was the one who grabbed Amber. Just at 3:22, an old Camaro rolled down Maple Street, its music pounding loudly from the speakers. The car slowed near the bus stop, and 3 guys got out, moving as if they owned the whole block. Brad spotted Kayla quickly, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. "Who's this new girl?" he asked. "Nobody," Jessica replied fast. "Just waiting for the bus." Connor laughed, showing off the tattoos covering his arms. "The forearms reminded me of someone who clearly does not belong in this neighborhood." Tyler stepped closer to Amber, who instinctively moved behind. "Kayla, did you bring backup, sweetheart?" "That is not very friendly," Kayla said, her voice echoing through the quiet street. "I'm here to have a conversation with you 3. Brad's eyebrows lifted. "A conversation about what? About how you're going to leave these girls alone from now on?" The 3 boys exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. Connor wiped his eyes theatrically. "Oh, that is rich. The reinforcements consist of one girl who thinks she is tough." "I do not think anything," Kayla replied calmly. "I am simply informing you that your harassment ends today." Tyler stepped even closer to Amber, deliberately invading her space. "And what if we do not feel like ending anything? Then you will find out that some people are not easy targets." Brad moved to Kayla's left side as Connor took the right. "You know what? I like you. You've got spirit. Why do you not dump these losers and hang out with some real men?" "I am not interested in hanging out with boys who terrorize children," Kayla answered firmly. Tyler's voice grew harsh. "These are not children. They are old enough to learn some respect." He reached out to grab Amber's shoulder, but Kayla moved her left hand to intercept Tyler's reaching arm, twisting it away from Amber while her right hand struck his wrist. Tyler yelped and stumbled backward, clutching his arm. "What the—" Connor moved forward, but Kayla was already adjusting her position. "Last warning," she said calmly, her stance steady and prepared. She began to step away when Brad suddenly charged from her left side. At the same moment, Connor approached from the right. Kayla bent low, sweeping Brad's legs while twisting her body to strike Connor in the abdomen with her elbow. Both young men crashed to the ground with force. Tyler, still holding his injured wrist, pulled out his phone. You crazy witch. I'm calling the cops. Go ahead, Kayla replied without diverting her gaze from Brad and Connor, who were struggling to stand. Tell them 3 high school boys got beaten up while trying to attack 2 younger girls. I'm sure that will help your case. From behind Kayla, Jessica had been recording everything. I caught the whole thing, she said, her voice filled with confidence, including the moment Tyler tried to grab Amber. Brad wiped the blood off his split lip, looking at Kayla with a mixture of respect and rage. You don't know who you're dealing with. We're 3 cowards who pick on girls smaller than us. Yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea, Kayla answered sharply. Connor limped back toward the car, his tough guy attitude completely gone. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Kayla stated firmly. If I ever see any of you near these girls again, our next talk won't be so polite. Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but Brad grabbed his arm. Come on, let's get out of here. As the Camaro sped away with screeching tires, Jessica lowered her phone, hands trembling. Oh my God, that was amazing. Are you both all right? Kayla. She turned her attention back to the girls, and Amber nodded, her eyes shining with tears of relief. Thank you. I never thought you would actually do it. They were sure you'd be too frightened to fight back, Kayla said. Bullies always expect that, Kayla replied firmly. The bus came around the corner, its brakes hissing as it slowed to a stop. As they climbed aboard, Jessica was already busy uploading the video to her social media profiles. Everyone has to see this, she said, bursting with excitement. People need to know someone is finally standing up to these bullies. Kayla settled into her seat, unaware that Jessica's video would be shared hundreds of times before the evening, propelling her from a local hero to a viral star overnight. By 7 o'clock in the evening, Jessica's video had been shared over 300 times. By 9 o'clock, that number had reached 1,000. The caption read, "Girl stands up to bullies harassing students at the bus stop." Finally, someone fights back. Comments began flowing in from students all across 3 different school districts. Stories of harassment, threats, and abuse that had long been whispered quietly in hallways suddenly found a public audience. She is the girl who stood up to Derek Morgan too, someone wrote. It's about time somebody challenged the Riverside gang. She should teach self-defense classes. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Derek Morgan sat on his bed, an ice pack pressed against his still swollen nose, watching the video again for the 5th time. His phone buzzed with notifications from friends sending him the clip, asking how he felt about it. This was the very same girl who had embarrassed him. This cannot be real, he whispered as he scrolled through the comments. Someone had already pieced everything together, sharing their own encounter with Kayla in the school parking lot. His phone buzzed, Jack Wilson's name lighting up the screen. Are you seeing this? Jack's voice was tense with anger. Everyone was witnessing it. My father has already started asking questions about why I look like I was hit by a truck. Kayla is making us look like absolute fools. First us, now the guys from Riverside. People are even calling her some kind of superhero. Derek Morgan's jaw tightened. She is not a superhero. She merely got lucky twice at the same time. Meanwhile, in Riverside, Brad Matthews was having a similar talk with his group. How did we come across as so weak? Connor demanded, pacing through his garage while Tyler tended to his sore wrist. 3 of us against 1 girl, and we were completely crushed because she knew how to fight and we didn't expect it, Brad said. But his tone lacked certainty. Tyler replayed the video once more. Look at her. She doesn't even appear tired afterward. Now everyone is calling us cowards and bullies. We are bullies, Connor snapped. That's exactly the point. Fear keeps people in line. But if news spreads that some high school girl can take us down, our reputation is ruined. Brad concluded. No one will respect us anymore after this. Back at Millbrook High, the viral video was throwing the school into a different kind of turmoil. Students who had endured in silence were suddenly starting to speak up. Principal Martinez arrived at the school, ready to address the growing unrest. On Monday morning, Kayla found her voicemail flooded with numerous messages from parents. Some insisted that Kayla should be expelled due to alleged violence, while others commended her for standing up to protect their children. Most callers wanted to understand why the school had not taken any action against the bullying their kids had been experiencing. Kayla's secretary, Mrs. Chen, handed her a pile of incident reports filed throughout the weekend. 12 students had come forward with complaints about harassment, all referencing the video they had seen and explaining that they could no longer keep silent. Principal Martinez skimmed through the reports, her face becoming increasingly concerned with every page. How is it possible that none of this was known before? Some incidents took place beyond school grounds. Others were supposedly reported by the students but never addressed. During the first class, Kayla found herself surrounded by classmates who wanted to express gratitude, ask questions, or simply be close to someone who dared to challenge the failing system. "You are like a real-life action hero," said a sophomore named Danny, whose own report detailed months of bullying by older students. "I'm not a hero," Kayla answered. "I just got tired of being pushed around." Despite the students' admiration for her courage, the administration was frantic to manage the situation. Principal Martinez convened an urgent meeting with the school board, where the discussion quickly shifted toward minimizing the fallout. Since the incident occurred outside school property, Board President Walsh insisted the school could distance itself from responsibility. "We can only free ourselves from this completely when Principal Martinez pulled up the video on her laptop, because many of the comments pointed out that our school has a bullying issue we have been neglecting." Board member Johnson leaned closer and asked, "What I am proposing is that we start paying attention to what these students are expressing instead of just worrying about our reputation." The discussion became intense as the board members argued about whether to stand behind Kayla or to suspend her for fighting. At the same time, a parent-led petition was spreading online demanding self-defense courses and stronger protections for the students. By midday, over 50 students had joined a support group organized by Jessica. The group's purpose was clear. It aimed to establish a safe environment for students who had faced harassment and to push for improved safety rules. As Kayla walked through the corridors, she sensed a noticeable shift. Students who once looked away now gave her approving nods. Teachers who had ignored subtle bullying before were now more attentive. However, she also saw Derek Morgan and his friends glaring at her with open hostility. She realized that although she had won a few battles, the struggle was far from finished. The viral video had given her a voice and an audience, but had also made her a bigger target than ever. On Tuesday morning, Kayla was summoned to the principal's office before the first class began. Principal Martinez sat at her desk ready to speak. With the weary look of someone who had been awake far too long handling phone calls, the principal said, "Please have a seat." Principal Martinez indicated the chair opposite her. "We need to talk about what took place at the bus stop. Students were being harassed. I helped by physically defending them off school grounds," Kayla explained calmly. Opening a file on her desk, Principal Martinez responded, "I have already received 17 calls from parents since yesterday. Some want you expelled, others believe a medal is deserved. The school board is meeting tonight to decide how to address this matter." Kayla maintained her composure. "Address what exactly?" "I stood up for 2 students against an assault." "You assaulted 3 boys and shared it online," Martinez countered firmly. "I did not post anything, and those boys were bullying students from our school," Kayla insisted. Principal Martinez massaged her temples. "Kayla, I understand your feelings, but taking the law into your own hands is not the solution. We have established procedures and protocols." Kayla challenged, "Your procedures did not stop Derek Morgan from harassing me all week. Your protocols failed Jessica and Amber when they were grabbed and threatened." The principal paused, then said, "Look, I am trying to assist you here. The school board wants this issue to be resolved quietly. If you agree to refrain from physical interventions, suspension can likely be avoided. If you refuse, more severe consequences will have to be considered." Kayla stood up and asked, "Is that everything?" "Please reflect on what I have told you. This path you are taking is dangerous." As Kayla left the office, she noticed Danny and 3 other students waiting in the corridor. Danny nervously said, "We heard you were called in. Are you in trouble?" Kayla began walking toward her locker and asked, "Why do you think that?" Danny caught up with her, saying, "A bunch of us were talking, and we wanted to ask if you could teach us something." Kayla paused and said, "Teach you what, exactly?" Danny replied with growing confidence, "How to fight back, how to defend ourselves. I have been pushed around since 7th grade, but yesterday, for the first time, no one bothered me. Everyone seemed scared." Kayla was skeptical and said, "That won't last forever." Danny insisted, "Exactly. That is why we need to learn how to protect ourselves." At that moment, a girl named Sarah stepped forward. "Imda," she said, "my older brother goes to Riverside. He said that those boys you fought are planning something because they feel embarrassed and angry." "What kind of plan?" Kayla asked. Sarah shook her head. "He would not say, but he told me to be careful when walking home." Meanwhile, in the gym office, Coach Rodriguez was having a tough conversation with Principal Martinez. Principal Martinez said, "You want me to ban her from using the gym?" Coach Rodriguez crossed his arms and asked, "For what reason?" Principal Martinez replied, "She started an unauthorized martial arts program. Parents are calling it a fight club." Coach Rodriguez defended Kayla. "Have you seen what she is really doing? She is teaching kids basic self-defense moves and building their confidence. It is exactly what many of these students need." Principal Martinez sighed and said, "But there are insurance and liability concerns. Facing these harassment issues alone is less daunting than what could happen if one of these incidents escalates." Coach Rodriguez leaned in and said to Sarah, "I have been teaching here for 12 years and have never seen students so invested in physical fitness as they are this week. The school board might not agree, but maybe they should spend time in the hallways observing how students are interacting, noticing how bullies are now finding other ways to occupy their time." That afternoon, Kayla arrived at the gym to find 30 students waiting for her. Word had spread despite the administration's worries. Students who had never spoken before were now connected by their shared experiences of harassment and their wish to improve their situation. "I spoke with Principal Martinez," Kayla proclaimed. "The school board does not want us to meet here." A wave of disappointment passed through the group. "However," Kayla added, "this is technically after school hours and Coach Rodriguez has allowed us to use the space." Coach Rodriguez then appeared from his office and declared, "As far as I'm concerned, this is a fitness club centered on self-defense and building confidence, fully compliant with school rules." The students broke into cheers, but Kayla raised her hand to quiet them down. "Before we begin, everyone must understand this is not about fighting. It is about acquiring skills and confidence to protect yourself and others. We do not seek trouble, but we do not avoid it either." As she started instructing basic defensive positions, she noticed Derek Morgan and Jack Wilson observing through the gym's glass doors, their faces showing a mix of anger and what might have been fear. Derek looked at Jack and said, "She is creating an army." "What should we do about this?" Derek's smile was cold as he replied, "We must ensure everyone realizes that every action has its consequences." Inside the gym, students practiced releasing themselves from wrist grips and learned verbal techniques to calm situations, unaware that their new sense of confidence was seen as a direct challenge to those who had benefited from their fear. By Friday, Kayla Walker's self-defense program had expanded to more than 60 participants. The corner of the gym hummed with energy as teenagers practiced escaping holds, boosting their self-assurance and learning how to communicate strength through their posture. Kayla reminded the group, "The main aim is always to calm things down and get away safely. Fighting should be the very last option, never the first." Sarah, who had been quiet and withdrawn just a few days earlier, now stood taller while rehearsing defensive techniques. She told Danny during a water break, "I cannot believe how differently I feel. It is like I actually have some control over what happens to me." Danny wiped sweat from his brow and replied, "Same here. Yesterday, when those older students tried to bother me in the hallway, I just met their gaze and kept walking. They gave up." Coach Rodriguez observed everything from his office, making notes for his report to Principal Martinez. The change in these students was astonishing not only in their appearance, but in their overall attitude. They carried themselves with more pride, spoke more assertively, and appeared to encourage one another in ways he had never witnessed before. However, while the program thrived inside the gym, external challenges were gathering strength. That same Friday evening, Derek Morgan waited inside his car parked at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. His nose had mended, but his self-respect was still deeply wounded. The video capturing his embarrassment had been watched over 10,000 times, accompanied by comments that made him feel deeply uneasy. At 8:30, a battered Camaro pulled up beside him. Brad Matthews stepped out, followed by Connor and Tyler, all wearing expressions of anger and frustration matching Derek's own. "Took you long enough," Derek remarked as they slid into the booth opposite him and Jack. "Had to make sure no one was following us," Brad answered in a tense tone. "We cannot risk more videos spreading." Tommy Bradley, "Ostavljeno tak dostateczna lokalizovana," shifted in his seat, uneasy. "I still think this is a bad plan. What if someone finds out we are working together?" "No one will find out," Derek snapped, "unless you decide to start talking." Connor leaned forward. "We are all facing the same problem. That girl made us look weak, and now everyone believes they can challenge us. Our reputations are ruined." "It goes beyond that," Jack added. "She's actually teaching other students how to fight back. Yesterday, some freshmen even pushed back against us. When I tried to challenge him as a freshman, Tyler gave an angry nod. The same thing is unfolding at our school. Kids who used to hand over their lunch money are suddenly standing up for themselves." Derek pulled out his phone and showed a video from that afternoon's training session. 60 kids are learning how to fight in just 1 month, and soon it will be 100. Brad asked, "What is your plan?" Derek's smile was cold and calculating. "We cannot lay a hand on her anymore. Too many people are watching. Too many cameras. But we can take her down through legal means." "How about assault charges? My dad has connections in the legal world. We file complaints with the police. Say she attacked us without cause, get her arrested, expelled, maybe even sent to juvenile detention." Connor frowned. "But there is video proof of what actually happened." "Videos can be twisted," Derek said smoothly, "especially when you have the right attorney to explain it all to a judge. My dad has already spoken to our family lawyer." "What about the bus stop incident?" Tyler asked. "That video is everywhere. 3 high school boys against 1 girl. We will claim she was armed and we had to defend ourselves. Who will believe that we wanted to harm those sophomore girls?" Jake nodded slowly. "And once she is arrested, her little fight club will collapse. Kids will be scared again, and we will regain control." Brad looked doubtful. This plan might fail. What if no one believes us? "They will," Derek said confidently, "because my family has influence in this town belonged to them, not to Kayla, because we were the ones who suffered, not her." The 6 boys spent the following hour devising their plan. They would synchronize their accounts, submit complaints at the same time, and show a united front by accusing Kayla Walker of being a dangerous person who assaulted innocent students without any reason. Meanwhile, back at Millbrook High, Kayla was wrapping up the training session, unaware of the legal snare being prepared against her. Same time Monday, Sarah asked as students gathered their things. "Absolutely," Kayla responded. "And remember to practice your situational awareness over the weekend. Trust your instincts." As the students left, excitedly discussing their progress, Coach Rodriguez approached Kayla quietly. "You've accomplished something remarkable here," he said softly. "These kids are different, stronger now." "They were always strong," Kayla answered. "They just needed to remember. But be cautious. Change like this makes some people uneasy, especially those who benefit from the old ways." Kayla nodded while collecting her belongings. She had sensed the tension all week, the way Derek Morgan and his friends watched her, the hushed talks that stopped when she came near, the feeling that something was about to emerge beneath the surface. What she did not realize was that the storm was imminent, and it would challenge not only her combat skills but also her belief in justice. Early Monday morning, Dr. Patricia Walker received the call that would alter everything. While reviewing patient files at the hospital, Dr. Patricia Walker's phone buzzed with an unknown caller. It was Sergeant Hayes from the Millbrook Police Department requesting her presence at the station along with her daughter. Patricia's heart sank as she asked, "Is Kayla hurt? What happened?" The sergeant reassured her that Kayla was not injured but explained that assault charges had been filed against her and she needed to come in for questioning. "Assault charges? That cannot be true. My daughter is not capable of that," Patricia insisted. The officer replied, "Ma'am, there are 6 complainants involved. I recommend you seek legal counsel." Shaken, Patricia dialed Kayla's school and then her own supervisor to apply for emergency leave. By the time she arrived at Millbrook High, police officers were already waiting in the principal's office. Principal Martinez appeared deeply troubled as she detailed the situation. 6 boys from 2 different schools had officially accused Kayla of attacking them without cause. "That's absurd," Patricia declared strongly. "My daughter was only defending herself and standing up for other students." Sergeant Hayes countered, "The allegations paint a different picture." He checked his notes and added, "They claim Kayla has been deliberately assaulting male students and several have sought restraining orders." When Kayla was summoned into the office, her usual calm demeanor faltered for the first time since transferring to Millbrook. The worried look on her mother's face and the serious expression of the officer made her realize the gravity of the situation involving Derek Morgan. Retaliation took a shape she never expected. "Am I being arrested?" she asked softly. "Not yet," Sergeant Hayes answered, "but you need to come to the station for questioning. Your mother can join you." As news spread through the school that Kayla had been taken by the police, the students burst into coordinated turmoil. Jessica Martinez broke down in tears when she heard the news. "This is my fault," she wept to Sarah. "If only I had not shared that video." "No," Sarah replied with surprising confidence. "This is Derek's fault and Brad's too, along with all the other bullies who cannot tolerate someone finally standing up to them." Within 60 minutes, the students were already organizing. Danny created a group chat named Justice for Kayla, which gained over 200 members in half an hour. Clips from the bus stop event were reposted with careful explanations of what truly happened. Marcus Thompson, who had warned Kayla weeks earlier, now led a spontaneous protest in the school cafeteria. "They want to destroy her for defending us," he declared to anyone willing to hear, "for giving us the strength to stand up for ourselves." Meanwhile, at the police station, Kayla sat in the interrogation room alongside her mother and the court-appointed lawyer, Dr. Patricia Walker had quickly contacted. "Tell me exactly what occurred," the lawyer Ms. Rodriguez requested, "starting from your very first day at school." Kayla then recounted everything about Derek's actions. Demands for protection money, increasing harassment, the altered recording, the confrontation in the parking lot, and the incident at the bus stop. Her mother listened with mounting frustration as the details unfolded that Kayla had never revealed before. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" Dr. Patricia Walker asked, her voice filled with pain. Kayla explained it was because she believed she could face it alone and also feared that involving the school would only worsen the situation. Mrs. Rodriguez was taking notes urgently. "Do you have any proof of this harassment?" she inquired. "Some," Kayla replied. "I took pictures of the damage they did to my locker. There might be security camera recordings of some of the episodes back at school." Meanwhile, Coach Rodriguez was engaged in a tense discussion with Principal Martinez. "You understand this is wrong," he said, his tone tight with restrained anger. "You've witnessed how much that girl has done for our students, the confidence she's instilled and how she's encouraged them to stand their ground." Principal Martinez responded, "My hands are tied. 6 families have lodged complaints, and the school board is in crisis mode because they care more about lawsuits than doing what is right." Coach Rodriguez did not agree and pressed on. "Let me finish. I have seen Derek Morrison and his friends intimidate students for years. I have submitted reports, proposed solutions, and suggested punishments. But nothing changed. Then one girl dares to confront them and suddenly everyone is alarmed about violence in schools." Their conversation was cut short by a gentle knock on the door. Chen entered looking clearly overwhelmed. Principal Martinez reported there were about 50 students gathered in the main hallway holding signs. They were demanding that Kayla's charges be dropped. Curious about the kind of signs, Chen asked. Someone replied, "Justice for Kayla. And stop protecting bullies, she stood up for us." More parents were arriving as well. Principal Martinez closed her eyes and said, "Call the school board president and inform him we have a situation." As the protest outside intensified, Dr. Patricia Walker sat beside her daughter at the police station, watching her young face the consequences of bravely confronting injustice. Patricia whispered softly, "No matter what happens, I am proud of you." Kayla squeezed her mother's hand, aware that the battle for her freedom was only starting, but comforted by the fact she was no longer alone. 2 weeks later, on the evening before the trial, Kayla sat at her kitchen table going over her testimony with Ms. Rodriguez. The lawyer had become a passionate defender, offering her services pro bono after witnessing clear evidence of ongoing harassment. "Remember," Ms. Rodriguez said, tapping her pen on the legal pad, "stick to the facts and don't let their lawyer provoke you into anger. That is exactly what they want." Kayla, voicing the worry that had haunted her nights, asked, "What if the judge does not believe me?" Ms. Rodriguez assured her, "Then we will appeal. But I believe you will be surprised how much support you actually have." At that moment, Dr. Walker entered carrying a box filled with printed emails. "These are just from today," she said, placing it down heavily. Letters and messages pouring in showed a community rallying behind Kayla, with support flowing in from parents, students, and even teachers from other schools who caught wind of the situation. Ms. Rodriguez smiled confidently. The prosecutor's office was receiving similar messages, and public opinion was overwhelmingly on your side. Across town, Derek Morgan was locked in a very different discussion with his father's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, a sharply dressed man with piercing eyes and a pricey watch. "I want you to fully grasp this," Blackwood said, his voice slicing through the tension in the Morgan family's living room. "If there are any contradictions in your testimony tomorrow, the entire case will collapse." Derek shifted uneasily. "There won't be any contradictions?" "There better not be, because if it's revealed that you lied, assault charges will be the least of your worries. Filing false police reports is a felony. Jack Wilson and Tommy Bradley sat tensely on the leather couch, exchanging nervous looks. The reality of what they had done was beginning to weigh heavily on them as the trial loomed closer. "What about the videos?" Tommy asked faintly. "People will see exactly what happened." Blackwood responded smoothly. "Videos can be easily taken out of context. That's why we're focusing on establishing a pattern of violent behavior. 6 separate incidents make it more difficult to argue self-defense." Meanwhile, Brad Matthews was grappling with his own doubts at the Riverside Boys emergency meeting. "I'm starting to think we made a mistake," Tyler confessed, pacing around Connor's garage. "What if they possess evidence unknown to us? Like what Brad captured, but his voice lacked its typical strength. Security cameras, witnesses? I'm not sure. Yet this entire situation feels like it is slipping beyond control." Connor nodded with a serious expression. "My father warns that if we lose this trial, we could face charges for perjury. He is considering hiring our own attorney." "Your father has every reason to be anxious," Tyler remarked, "because I overheard something today. Apparently, around 20 students will be testifying for her tomorrow." Back at Millbrook High, оставлено так как название учреждения, those 20 students gathered in the library for one last review session, arranged by Marcus Thompson and Jessica Martinez. Recall that Marcus told the group to simply tell the truth about what they saw and experienced. Do not exaggerate or add details you are uncertain about. Sarah raised her hand and asked what happens if they attempt to portray us as liars. "Then stay composed and stick to our accounts," Jessica answered, "since our stories are genuine." Danny nodded decisively and said that he had been harassed by Derek for 3 years and finally tomorrow he would get to share that experience with someone in authority. Coach Rodriguez, who had been observing quietly from the back, stepped forward. "I want all of you to realize how proud I am of your bravery. Standing up in court demands courage, similar to what Kayla showed that night in the parking lot. Will you be testifying as well, Coach?" Sarah inquired. "I will, and so will Principal Martinez, although she has yet to realize it." The group appeared taken aback as Marcus frowned. "She will testify on behalf of Kayla. Her testimony will cover the harassment complaints that were submitted but ignored, revealing the ongoing conduct that resulted in this situation." Ms. Rodriguez served her with a subpoena this afternoon. As the meeting ended, students embraced one another, fully aware that tomorrow would decide not only Kayla's destiny but also the future atmosphere of their school. That night, Kayla lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, reflecting on all that had brought her to this point. 8 months earlier, she had been a reserved girl in Detroit, dedicated to her training and education. Now she found herself at the heart of a legal dispute that had fractured her newfound community. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "No matter what happens tomorrow, you have changed everything here. Thank you." Similar notes had poured in throughout the evening, from students she had assisted, parents whose children gained strength, and even strangers moved by viral videos inspired by her bravery. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she finally fell asleep, aware that in 8 hours she would enter the courtroom bearing the hopes and anxieties of every person who had ever faced bullying. Anyone who had been told to remain silent, and all who believe that defending what is right is worth any risk. The trial might decide her legal outcome, but the true judgment had already been passed by her community. The Millbrook County Courthouse was alive with tension as supporters occupied every seat available. Students, parents, and community members arrived early, forming a line that wrapped around the entire building. Judge Patricia Thompson, a firm woman in her 50s, called the court to order promptly at 9 o'clock in the morning. The case was titled, "The State versus Kayla Walker, facing charges of second-degree assault." "Mr. Blackwood, you may begin your opening statement," the judge instructed. Derek's lawyer stood confidently, his tailored suit drawing attention. He declared, "Your Honor, this trial concerns a pattern of unprovoked attacks committed by the defendant against 6 innocent young men. We will demonstrate that Kayla Walker deliberately singled out and physically harmed my clients, inflicting not only bodily injury but also emotional distress. He nodded toward Derek, who sat with his head lowered, portraying himself as the victim. These young men were simply living their everyday lives when they became victims of the defendant's aggression. The proof will establish that she is a dangerous individual who exploits her martial arts skills to intimidate and injure others. Ms. Rodriguez rose with resolve to defend Kayla, speaking clearly and firmly. Your Honor, this is not a matter of unprovoked assault, but rather a young woman protecting herself and others from ongoing harassment and bullying. The evidence will reveal that every action my client took was a reaction to mounting threats and actual physical harm. The prosecution began by calling Derek to the stand. He appeared practiced yet uneasy as he recounted a distorted story, claiming Kayla had confronted him aggressively in the cafeteria. I was merely trying to be friendly to the newcomer, Derek stated with a trembling voice meant to convey false sincerity. I offered to show her around and help her settle in. Instead, she reacted with hostility and threats. When asked about the parking lot incident, Blackwood pressed. She trapped me and my friends after school. We tried to leave, but she kept following us. When I attempted to calm things down, she suddenly attacked without warning. During cross-examination, Miss Rodriguez questioned Mr. Morgan, "Is it not true that you demanded protection money from my client on her first day?" He replied, "I have no idea what you are talking about." She continued, "Is it also true that you created an altered audio recording to shame her in front of other students?" Derek's confidence faltered a little as he denied any tampering. "I never edited anything." Ms. Rodriguez then addressed the judge, "Your Honor, I present Defense Exhibit A." The courtroom fell into silence as the original uncut recording of Kayla's English class discussion played, followed immediately by Derek's altered version. The contrast was striking and undeniable. Derek blushed as murmurs spread through the courtroom. "That was just a joke," he protested. "A joke you used to humiliate my client in front of 30 people. Students." "Objection," Blackwood spoke, but the damage had already been done. The prosecution's case moved forward with Jack and Tommy providing similar fabricated stories, yet their accounts began to unravel under intense cross-examination. Tommy's version contradicted Jack's timeline, and Jack could not justify why surveillance videos depicted them bullying other students on the same days they claimed to be victims. When Brad Matthews took the stand to support the Riverside boys, his testimony collapsed even more rapidly. "So you are telling this court," Ms. Rodriguez questioned, "that 3 high school boys were intimidated by one girl at a bus stop?" "She was the aggressor," Brad muttered. "Aggressor? Or was she protecting 2 younger students from bullying?" Ms. Rodriguez played Jessica's unedited footage, which unmistakably captured Brad and his friends threatening the girls before Kayla stepped in. The defense began with Marcus Thompson, whose account regarding Derek's 3-year harassment campaign was devastating. One after another, students described incidents of bullying that clearly revealed a pattern of systematic intimidation. Jessica's heartfelt testimony about the bus stop event moved many jurors to tears. Tyler grabbed my friend's arm when she tried to step away. We felt frightened and outnumbered. Kayla saved us. Sarah's statement was equally impactful. Derek and his friends turned school into a nightmare for anyone they chose to target. Kayla gave us hope that someone would stand up for us. The moment Kayla finally stood up to them arrived. Principal Martinez reluctantly admitted that reports of harassment had been ignored and that the school failed to safeguard its students, giving the defense's argument substantial institutional backing. Ultimately, Kayla took the witness stand herself. Her calm and collected answers stood in stark contrast to the nervous and evasive responses of the complainant. She testified, "I never wanted to fight anyone. I just wanted to attend school safely. When that was impossible, I defended myself and others who could not protect themselves." During the closing statements, Ms. Rodriguez appealed directly to the judge's sense of justice. "Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows my client acted in self-defense against ongoing harassment and assault. Punishing her for defending herself and others would send a dangerous message that bullies can act without consequences, while their victims face criminal charges for standing up." Judge Thompson pondered for 30 minutes before returning. The courtroom fell silent as she looked straight at Kayla and declared, "After thoroughly reviewing all the evidence and testimonies, this court finds the defendant not guilty of all charges. Furthermore, I suggest the district attorney pursue potential perjury charges against the complainants." Cheers broke out throughout the room as Kayla embraced her mother and lawyer, finally liberated from the legal threat that had loomed over her for weeks. The gavel's decisive knock marked the end of a daunting struggle. The courtroom echoed with the weight of Judge Thompson's declaration as his words settled over the crowded room. Derek Morrison remained motionless at the plaintiff's table, his complexion drained with the gravity of facing perjury accusations. Behind him, his father's demeanor had shifted dramatically from assured command to barely restrained anger. "You told me this was certain," Mr. Morrison hissed to Blackwood just as reporters began closing in. "You claimed the girl had no chance." Blackwood was already gathering his belongings, intent on distancing himself from the catastrophe. "Your son lied to me about the evidence. Once those recordings emerged, there was nothing I could do." Across the room, Jack Wilson and Tommy Bradley sat stunned as their parents absorbed the shock. Mrs. Wilson's face was pale with disbelief. "Perjury charges, those are felonies, right, Mom?" Jack started, but his mother interrupted sharply. "We will talk about this at home, and you will personally contact every family affected by this chaos to apologize." Meanwhile, the Riverside boys faced their own moment of reckoning. Brad Matthews watched helplessly as his carefully maintained tough exterior fell apart, while his father stood to leave without uttering a word. Connor and Tyler followed, their previous bravado completely gone. "This is madness," Tyler whispered through the crowd. "We could go to prison for this." "You should have considered that before you decided to lie under oath," Connor's mother snapped, clearly disappointed. "I raised you to be better than this." The families of the complainants left the courthouse feeling ashamed, while the celebration was just beginning. Students who had testified surrounded Kayla with tears of happiness and relief. "You did it!" Jessica exclaimed, embracing Kayla tightly. "You actually won?" "We did it," Kayla corrected, looking around at all the faces who had stood by her side. "All of us together." Dr. Patricia Walker stood nearby, observing her daughter with a blend of pride and wonder. The quiet girl who had moved from Detroit just a few months ago had become a symbol of bravery for the entire community. "I am so proud of you, baby," she whispered as Kayla reached her, "not just for the victory, but for the way you handled everything." Ms. Rodriguez gathered her papers with a sense of fulfillment. In her 20 years of experience, she had seldom witnessed a case where justice seemed so unmistakable. The district attorney would definitely pursue charges for perjury, she assured the Walker family. False police reports and lying under oath meant these boys faced serious legal consequences ahead. Outside the courthouse, news vans crowded the street, while reporters interviewed students, parents, and community members about the historic case. The story had expanded beyond Millbrook General, sparking a nationwide discussion about bullying, self-defense, and the failure of institutions to safeguard students. "This sends a strong message," Marcus Thompson told a reporter, surrounded by dozens of students. "You cannot terrorize others and then claim victimhood when they defend themselves." The weeks after the trial brought rapid and significant changes to the community. Principal Martinez of Millbrook High faced intense scrutiny following her courtroom testimony concerning overlooked harassment reports and subsequently enacted new measures to combat bullying. The policy of zero tolerance transformed from mere words in a handbook into a firm, enforceable stance. Derek Morrison never returned to the school. The combined perjury charges alongside civil lawsuits filed by multiple families of harassed students resulted in his transfer to a private military academy located 3 states away. His parents quietly sold their home and relocated, unable to confront the community where their son's offenses had come to light. Jack Wilson and Tommy Bradley pleaded guilty to submitting false police reports, receiving sentences involving community service and probation. Both were mandated to attend counseling sessions and complete anger management programs. Jack lost his college scholarship, and Tommy faced a permanent suspension from the football team. The boys from Riverside experienced similar punishments. Brad Matthews was expelled and charged with numerous harassment offenses based on victim testimonies after the trial. Connor and Tyler were suspended as their own legal cases proceeded, their reputations left damaged. The most pivotal development appeared through Kayla Walker's self-defense initiative, which secured official approval and expanded throughout the entire school. 3 months post-trial, Coach Rodriguez observed over 100 students engaged in the program, now named the Student Empowerment and Safety Program, with a growing waiting list eager to join. The program had grown so much that they added evening classes and weekend workshops. "I never imagined it would expand this much," he told Kayla as she guided a group of freshmen through basic self-defense moves. "Neither did I," Kayla answered, adjusting a student's posture. "But I believe people were ready for something like this. They just needed permission to believe they could be powerful." The initiative had moved beyond just physical defense to incorporate conflict resolution, bystander intervention, and peer mediation. Students learned not only how to safeguard themselves, but also how to identify and stop bullying before it got worse. Sarah, one of Kayla Walker's earliest pupils, now worked as a peer instructor for younger students. "The best part is not about fighting," she told a group of anxious 7th graders. "It's about realizing that you no longer have to live in fear." The change was obvious throughout the school. Hallway interactions shifted significantly. Students walked with greater assurance, voiced their opinions more freely, and most importantly, supported each other when difficulties emerged. Danny, who had often been Derek Morrison's target, now led a peer support group for students struggling with anxiety and depression stemming from previous bullying. "Kayla never just taught us physical defense," he explained to newcomers. "She showed us that we deserve safety and that we hold the power to create it." The impact was far-reaching and deep. The program expanded beyond Millbrook High, and soon other schools within the district requested similar anti-bullying initiatives. Organizations across the country reached out for guidance, and college recruiters began taking note of Kayla's leadership and positive influence in the community. On a quiet Friday afternoon in spring, 6 months after the trial, Kayla found herself back in the same cafeteria where Derek Morgan had originally demanded protection money. However, the atmosphere was entirely transformed. Students from various grades and social circles now sat together, conversations were more energetic, and the tension that had once pervaded the room was completely absent. Jessica came over to Kayla's table holding a letter. "This came to the main office for you," she said with a smile. Kayla opened the envelope to discover a handwritten note from a student attending a school in California. "I saw your story on the news and started my own self-defense group. We have 30 members now and 0 bullying cases this semester. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to tolerate mistreatment." "Another one," Marcus Thompson said as he sat across from her. "Another one," Kayla replied, adding the letter to the growing collection she kept in her locker. Looking around the renovated cafeteria, and then out the windows to where students practiced confidence-building exercises in the courtyard. Kayla thought about how much had changed since the day she refused to give Derek Morgan protection money when she first arrived at Millbrook General. Trying to stay out of trouble and get through school quietly, Kayla soon realized that sometimes the most significant battles are not the ones you choose. They choose you. Moreover, standing up for what is right can transform not only your own life, but also an entire community. The bell rang, marking the end of lunch as students collected their belongings and headed to class. They moved with a vibrant energy and confidence that would have been unimaginable just a few months earlier. Kayla smiled while packing her things. Her mother had been right. Millbrook was different from Detroit. It was different in a better way, and Kayla had played a role in making that happen. Walking through hallways that had once seemed hostile, surrounded by students who had discovered their voices and strength, Kayla Walker understood that some battles are worth every ounce of effort you put into them. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please, like the video and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Meanwhile, I have selected 2 stories for you that I believe you will enjoy. Have a wonderful day.